Hi, I'm Victoria Dougherty, and welcome to Love at First Write. This is my inaugural video blog uh, where I want to talk about writing and story and specifically love and writing about love. This may surprise some of you who read my fiction because I write, excuse me, and read, but I write thrillers. I write Cold War thrillers. I write some noir. A lot of the stuff that I write is very gritty and it's about war and passion and espionage. And I write about some pretty bad people as well. But I think at the heart of my stories, and really any story that I find compelling as a reader, is a story of the heart, however that might manifest itself. Um, I never thought I'd write anything but thrillers or stories about, sort of historical stories that deal with very big things like war. But about 5 years ago, I started a blog called Cold. I started the blog because of a modern love piece that I wrote for the New York Times. It was called The Wrong Kind of Inheritance. And it was about when my youngest daughter was born with a catastrophic illness. That experience brought my mother and I closer together. My mother was a political prisoner, political refugee as well. She was deemed an enemy of the state when she was 12, and she had these incredibly harrowing experiences in communist Czechoslovakia. And my grandparents had these harrowing experiences in with both the Nazis and the communists. They hid Jews. I have this incredibly dramatic family history, so it's no wonder that I wrote thrillers, specifically Cold War thrillers. Even my brother, who came to the United States when he was 8, he and my mother escaped communist Czechoslovakia together, and for years he had nightmares where he would, put his hands up because he was dreaming about having a machine gun pointed in his face, which actually did indeed happen to him. So I started cold in writing personal essays, and I wanted to chronicle my own family lore, which has had a tremendous influence on my life and on my writing. And I also wanted to talk about things that matter, things that you can't put in a 120-word tweet. I love Twitter. This is not in any way a criticism of social media and what that has brought to our lives, but I think that we also need mediums that expand upon the things that matter to us and that don't skip stones. So in Cold, I wanted to write about love and war and passion and art and all of these things that run in such a deep current in our lives. And what I started, probably maybe a couple of years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. I'm not quite sure, but I started writing some very specific posts about love. They just sort of happened organically. I didn't intend to do that. I wrote about love stories that I knew, love stories in my family, love stories of friends, and I also wrote about my own love story with my husband and how that has evolved and the texture that it has brought to my life, the meaning, and how love affects us as human beings. How it is really our central point. And I was blown away by the response that I got, and I was blown away at how many people wrote to me and told me their stories of love and in such a naked, raw way. But what really struck me was how many of the people who wrote to me were men. Now, I do have a pretty high male readership, mostly because I write thrillers and men read thrillers. I think in terms of general fiction, 80% of all fiction readers, regardless of the genre, are women, which is pretty extraordinary. Except when it comes to thrillers, I think it evens out a little bit more with thrillers, but still about 50% of thriller readers are women. And my own readership, if my Facebook page is any judge, it, I probably have a 40 to maybe 45% male readership, which is quite high for a writer. And I was really taken aback that most of the love stories that I received were from men. I certainly did receive wonderful love stories from women. Excuse me, this is my dog who's on my lap. So if you hear some snorting or snoring, it's him. He's a Boston Terrier, and they snort and they snore. But so men were writing to me, and they were writing these incredible stories, these heartfelt, sometimes gushing, soul-stirring stories about their wives, their children, their thoughts of love, and what it's meant to their lives. And I was so struck by that. I was so struck with how honest the stories were and how poetic they were. They were, for the most part, just beautifully written. And they seemed to come from a place that where they were not editing themselves, if that makes sense. You know, they were not pouring over this, trying to make it sound poetic. It was a very natural poeticism that was coming out. The way they would describe their wives, what their wives meant to them, how their wives made them feel, how they would do anything for them. The way they would describe, you know, what having children has meant to them, how much it meant to them to take their son's hand for the first time and guide him across the street when he's just but a toddler. Stories that, you know, many of which we've all experienced, but when you see written about in such a meaningful way, some of them have caused me to simply gasp, you know, and I've had to just sit down and take them in. So that led me to start thinking about writing about love. I mean, I have 2 daughters and a son, and I also wanted to impart to them my own feelings, my feelings about how important it is to connect with others and to give of yourself, and what it means, and what also rings true. I think that often a criticism, sometimes rightly, sometimes not, of romances is that, you know, they're cringy and don't ring true. Certainly, that's something that I want to avoid. Nobody wants to write something. No writer wants to write something that their readers can't connect to, or that is maybe so based in wishful thinking that it doesn't do justice to the way people really love. And I'm no exception. The reason that I want to get feedback from readers and that I want to do this video diary is because I want this to be true. I want it to be a kick in the gut. I want to write about love in a way that matters to my readers, and that is a contribution to the way we human beings talk about love and interact with one another. So I hope that you will join me on this journey. And thank you. And I will see you next week.